Hi, I'm Brent Harder. I've been a longtime friend of the family, of the Hess family, and I used to be a member of our ward, Mission Lake Ward, right after I got baptized. I was baptized in 1978, which was shortly before the tragic incident of Kyle passing away. And I was a brand new member. He was our one of the counselors in our bishopric. Yes, I knew Kyle personally. He was a counselor in our bishopric. He was a ball of energy, and you shouldn't let his stature deceive you, because out of that small package there was just so much energy. And we all know that he didn't need much sleep either. Somehow he could just go with like half the sleep of a normal person, and he was always just enthusiastic. And in my recollection of Kyle, he was like the perfect guy, the perfect Mormon, the perfect father, the perfect worker, the perfect everything. I could see no fault with the man at all, and he always seemed to go out of his way to make people happy and compliment them and make them feel comfortable. And he's like a true Latter-day Saint in every way you can think of. And he's a good man to emulate. He is very Christ-like. I don't think anyone can really say anything bad about the man. It's just amazing the kind of individual he is, and everyone can only benefit from knowing him. What happened is I was baptized in that ward. Lake Forest Ward split. It got too big, and Mission Lake Ward was formed. That was the same week that I was actually baptized, and so I was like there from day one in Mission Lake Ward. I've been in the ward my whole entire life, even though the stakes have split and the wards have split off from it. It's always been Mission Lake, and I've always been in that ward, and I have never been in any other ward in my entire church life. What happened also is very interesting, is when I did become a member, that the blacks were able to hold the priesthood. That was just a new revelation given. And so right when I joined the church, that was like the big thing in the church then. Kyle was definitely one of the stronger members of our ward, and a leader, and one that you always had time for you. When I was a brand new member, I had like thousands of questions, and I would, in hindsight, I realized I probably shouldn't have done this, but I was calling up our bishop about every day, asking him things, until finally, in a kind and lovingly way, our Bishop Berger, he said, you ask a lot of questions, and I think your home teacher should be the one that should answer these. And I didn't realize that I was like consuming all of his time, and the bishops are very, they have a lot of other things to take care of besides one person asking a lot of questions. But Kyle would always help out too and answer any questions I had. And, he was very helpful. I didn't doubt the church in any way because of Kyle's death, no. I remember when we found out that he had passed away, that it was like a real blow to our whole ward. It was like kind of a really dark day finding this out, and it was very sad. And there were questions that I think everyone had. I mean, people probably thought that, you know, maybe Kyle was needed on the other side because he's such a like a good missionary type person. You know, there's a lot of missionary work to be able to be done on the other side. So that was a thought that a lot of people had. And you know, Karen is a very strong person, a good leader for the family, and I'm sure Heavenly Father could see the big picture and realize that, you know, even though Kyle was a great priesthood leader and a great leader of the family, that Karen was still had the capabilities of being able to raise the family on her own, like she has. And you know, Heavenly Father knows these things, and He, as we know, we would never get any trials or situations that we can't handle. He would never give us that. So that's a comforting thought too. Throughout my entire church time, I shouldn't say the entire time, but most of the time, I'd say at least 90 to 95% of the time, for my church callings, I've been a leader in the youth, the young men's program, either in scouting or in the presidency or even a president at one time. And so that's where I spent a lot of time with Kirk. He was one of the young men at the time, just coming up. He was. I remember a time when this was after Kyle's death that we were doing a trip up to the mountains to go skiing, and at the time, this was like way before snowboards were even conceived of, and Kirk was a good skier, a really good skier, and he was in our car that we were taking up to the mountains for a youth trip, and I remember how quiet this kid was. He was just really, really quiet, and we would try to talk to him and ask him questions and try to pull him out of his shell. And you know, he was like most young kids. He would just say as few words as possible. But when he got up there on the slopes, this guy was good. He was a really good skier, and I was really impressed. And I think he enjoyed being with us and helped loosen him up a little bit. On the way up and way back, we talked to him. Later in Kirk's life, he got interested in mountaineering and rock climbing, and I'd like to feel like I had some influence on him. I would always give him my old climbing magazines and talk to him about carabiners and cams and nut placements and cracks and how to do things. And together, along with another friend of his, Lane Hale, we've kind of climbed around together, and he and Lane became like really good climbing partners together and did a lot of really hard things, much more difficult than I can even do. But it was inspiring to see the bold things that they would do. There was a climb up at Talkeets, which is on Mount San Jacinto on the Idlewild side, famous rock climbing area that Kirk and Lane were going to do a famous climb. It was done many years ago by a climber named Royal Robbins, who's like an icon in the climbing arena. And Kirk and Lane were going to do a climb that he first climbed called the Open Book. It's rated to 5.9, very dramatic climb. It's like this, called an Open Book, and they climb right up in the crack. And then at one point there's an overhang that they've got to come up and around and over. And I volunteered to go up and rappel down from off to the side of this climb and actually photograph them doing this climb. And I got some really neat pictures of them doing this. And Kirk was the guy that was leading this climb, and he pulled out up and over this overhang, this roof. And if you look at this climb, and there's a lot of air underneath, it's really dramatic climb and really a beautiful climb. they did it really smoothly and quickly. They're both really good climbers, and it was fun photographing them. Well, Kirk has, he's in the Bishop. Of course, he's not as quiet as he used to be. It's hard to say whether I had much influence on him. I know he and I both have the same loves. We both love the outdoors. We both love the Sierras. We both love, really good, clean rock climbing, and we both have the same goals of climbing all the 14,000-foot peaks in California, which actually we've actually done a couple of them together. One of them was a climb called White Mountain. It's in the White Mountain Range, which is across from the Sierras on the Nevada side. It's a 14,000-foot peak that has a dirt road, or a dirt and slash rock road that goes up to the summit for a laboratory up on top. And that's the reason why the road is up there. And so my climbing partner and I had climbed this one many years ago, and I thought it'd be a really fun one to do, since there's a road up there, to do it on mountain bikes. So I invited Kirk to go along, and he and I and several other people, he had a bunch of people in his ward that wanted to do it, and we all went up and rode to the top of this 14,000-foot peak on mountain bikes. And even some kids were going along for a while until the altitude got to them and they had to turn back. And it was just a really neat experience. And we have I kind of put together a T-shirt that gave everyone with a little logo with our pictures up on the summit that shows, I called it the White Mountain Bicycle Club. And underneath this, for kind of a logo. And it was fun, kind of bonding experience climbing that mountain on mountain bikes, because there's not too many 14,000-foot peaks you can actually climb on a mountain bike. In fact, that's the only one I know of in California. I don't know if I gave him that goal or not. I mean, I know I have an office out in my garage that I've taken a lot of pictures of all these 14,000-foot peaks, really cool places. And I have like all these photographs on the wall of these places that I think he's seen before, and I know it kind of impressed him, I think, that he wanted to have something similar. So and I don't know if it was my quest that he kind of picked up on, or if this is something he kind of enjoyed doing too, and wanted to pick up on it. I haven't actually talked to him about that, but yes, Jenny calls it his bragging wall. Yeah, that's the
officially.
the bragging wall has all the photographs on there. But it's more than just bragging wall. It's like these photographs represent a lot of hard work and a lot of planning and a lot of really fond memories. That's the way I look at it myself. I don't look at it like a bragging wall. I just remember all the really good times up in the mountains at high altitude that have really been fun, especially the more technical it gets. I think Kirk is the same way, that he enjoys it more. And because the more technical, it's more fun to pit yourself against the elements and being safe. You want to come back, of course. There are times when it's not safe and you have to retreat. And actually, Kirk and I have been on a climb like that, climbing probably the most difficult and dangerous of all the 14,000ers, which is called Starlight Peak. And it's up in the high Sierras. And we were on a trip up there with my climbing partner, Nick Solberg, and my son, Shane Harder, and Kirk. All four of us went up there, and at the largest glacier in California. It's called the Palisade Glacier. And you climb up that, and then you start doing some more steep climb when you get up on the rock and get over the pass and back around on the backside, and you have to find which route to get to the top, and it's really kind of challenging. It's easy to get lost over there on the other side. Anyway, so that was a time that we turned around. I kind of got, the altitude finally got to me, which is rare. I don't usually get that. So I backed off, and then my son backed off also, and then Nick and Kirk were having a hard time finding the route, and so they finally backed off too. So it's always better to come back and be safe and take another shot at it another time. Sure, I'll talk a little bit about Kristen. Marjorie and I, my wife, we, many years ago, when our steak was the Mission Viejo steak before it was Santa Margarita steak, they had a program for the young women in the Laurel class that after they pass off all these requirements, and if they do, they are eligible to go on what was called a summiteer hike. They no longer do this program, but we were in charge of that. The state gave us responsibility to do that, and I went along as a priesthood holder, and many times along with my climbing partner, Nick Solberg, as a priesthood holder in case the girls needed protection or blessings or anything like that. Just, priesthood holders to watch over them, and then my wife would go along, and then also other women that enjoyed backpacking. And what we would do is we'd take them up to Yosemite for a whole week and backpack and just see just the beauties that God has made, and enjoy that. And lots of times we would like to do things like go cross country off the beaten path. And we'd look at a map and get our compasses out and say, this looks like a really cool place over here, but there's no trail. But if we just follow this like canyon, we can take this canyon all the way out to the trail, and then we can go back that way. So we looked at the map, and we looked at this place in Yosemite up in the high country up by Tuolumne Meadows called Virginia Canyon. And there was no trail down the bottom of this canyon, but it looked like it would be doable, and so we decided to go over this ridge, down this slope, into this valley, and then take it all the way out to where it hooked up to a trail many, many miles down this canyon. And we'd be going downhill, so we thought it would be kind of somewhat easy. And so we did this with Kristen and about 7 other girls. And I remember dropping down in this canyon, and it was like a beautiful, warm, sunny afternoon. It was like perfect, and we're just cross country. There's no trails up there, and we were just going down this big grassy slope into this beautiful creek bed that had just big boulders and wildflowers growing everywhere, and it was like this most picturesque, serene place. And we knew that we were like the only people going to be there because it was like the wilderness. And there was no trails there. And that day went really well, and then we camped out down there in the bottom. And the next day we got up and kept heading downstream in our path that we chose. And the farther we went down this canyon, the tougher and tougher it became. The steeper it became, the more foliage there was. And there were times when we would have to just like bend over branches and bushes just to get through areas, and it became really hard to move down this canyon. And I remember one time we came upon this opening, and there was like a little beach there with the water going by, and there was like a deer bone on the beach. And we went over to this deer bone, and it still looked like there was like saliva all over this deer bone. And then we looked down in the sand there, and there was like black bear tracks, big paw prints And we had known, and we could tell that this was like saliva still in his bones. So we're thinking, oh my gosh, there's a bear right around here. And we're like, and this is like a really good place to camp, but we're not going to camp right here. I mean, if there's a bear around here, it looks like he's been eating some bones or something, some deer. So we kept moving on, and then we went through a really thick brush. And in this brush was, and I was leading through this, and at the time I didn't know I was doing this, but it was so thick, we had to like, from about 3 or 5 feet away, you couldn't even see the next person, it was so thick. I had led through and stirred up a beehive and didn't know that there was a beehive in there. And so all the girls behind me were getting stung by these bees. And I had no clue, because I was the one just stirring them up. But then all these girls behind me, they're going, ah, ooh, ah, ah. You know, and they're all screaming, and they're just getting stung, and my wife's getting stung, and everyone's getting stung. And it was like horrible. And then after we got through this area, my wife calls me back. She says, you got to go back in there and save those girls. You got to go pull them out of there. Come on, you got to do it. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I got to go back. So my wife sent me back into the bushes to retrieve these girls out of the bushes who were all getting stung by the bees. And that's when I got stung myself. And I was just getting stung really bad. And we ended up getting all the girls out of there, and everyone got stung, and multiple times. And then we asked the girls, you know, how are you guys doing, you know? And then Kristen, we found out, could be a problem with her. The reason is that Karen, her mom, is allergic to bee stings. So bad that if she ever gets stung by a bee, she can die. And she has to carry a syringe around with her with some kind of serum that'll save her in case she does get stung. And we didn't know at the time whether Kristen would be, you know, if that's hereditary, and so she's gonna, you know, she could die if she got stung, and we didn't have that serum with us. So we had to give her a blessing. It was the only thing we could do. We gave her a blessing, and matter of fact, we ended up, my climbing partner and I gave all the girls blessings. I asked my wife if she wanted a blessing. She says, no, I don't need a blessing. So she's the only one that didn't get a blessing. And as you all know, Kristen's still alive, and hopefully that the priesthood blessing was what did it, if she is in fact susceptible to dying from a bee sting. But anyway, it's interesting that what happened, because everyone on that trip that got the blessing was fine an hour or two later, including Kristen. My wife, who didn't get the blessing, was in pain all night long. So, coincidence? You tell me, you know. I look at Karen as a mom as like if you were going to cross the plains with the pioneers, you'd want a Karen Hess there with you. She's the kind of woman that would you'd want to have along. And she has to be, for all that she did. I mean, she was pregnant with her youngest child when Kyle passed away. So Kyle never even saw the birth of that baby. And to raise that whole family herself, I know that she's done everything that was supposed to do. I know she had family home evenings. I know she did all the right things. I even remember her telling me once that she's always looking around for fun things to do with her family, that didn't cost much. I think she had explored all the parks in this whole area around here, and she knew where all they were, and she would take her family there because it was an inexpensive thing to do that the kids could like to do, and the playgrounds and stuff, and it's all fun, and it didn't cost anything. And you have to, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, and that's what she did. She was great. And if I was back in the old days with the pioneers crossing the plains, I'd want to have a woman like Karen on that voyage. She'd be great. She'd be inspirational, and she's always been a real positive person, very very good mother, and she'd teach piano lessons and music lessons to make ends meet for her family. She did whatever she had to do to provide for her family, and